Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis,
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro.
and welcome to the Road to the Breeders' Cup, Belmont at the Big A edition. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Road to the Breeders' Cup episode. And we are focused on a huge weekend of racing, with two races in particular taking place at Belmont at the Big A, and that's the Grade 1 Frizette and the Grade 1 Champagne for 2-year-old fillies and colts. Now, before we get to that race, I want to remind you to press that like and subscribe button on NYRA Bets YouTube to get all of our great content leading up to opening day at Keeneland and the Breeders' Cup and beyond. Kaylie, it is a jam-packed weekend of racing. New York, Kentucky, California. It's the last big weekend before the Breeders' Cup. How are you feeling?
Definitely really excited. This is one of those weekends that I'm going to have to set like 10 alarms on my phone to make sure I don't miss any race because there's just so much going on and I just could not be more excited. We're going to see some pretty promising 2-year-olds this weekend across the country. So that's always exciting.
It really is. And part of the reason we've broken this typical Road to the Breeders' Cup episode up is just because of what Kaylie said. There are so many races. There are the 2-year-old races in New York, the Frizette and the Champagne, which we are going to be focused on. But then we're going to have another episode for the Keeneland races, the Alcibiades, and the Breeders' Futurity. And then we'll have a third episode for Santa Anita covering the American Pharaoh and the Oak Leaf. So listen, it is a massive weekend of 2-year-old races. This is great content to get you ready for Breeders' Cup Juvenile Friday, that's for sure. But Kaylie, let's dive into what we have up at the Big A. And we're not even going to be there. We're going to be down in Keeneland. We're going to be down there taking in Tommy Joe and Ted Nolfi and Torpedo Anna and Diego Velasquez and so many other great horses that are riding down there this week.
Yeah, it just so happens every year. I mean, opening week of Keeneland, it's like, which one do you pick? Go to the Champagne or go to opening week? But so excited, obviously, to be able to cover both tracks at the same time and be able to watch all the great racing. And, I love Tommy Joe and Ted Nolfi, so really excited to see them in person.
Absolutely. We'll have a whole Love Fest episode about that in a little bit for Keeneland as well. But listen, let's dive into the Grade 1 Frizette taking place on Saturday, going a mile for 2-year-old fillies. This is one thing that is a little bit different about these races up here in New York. They're a one-turn mile. The races down in Keeneland as well as out west are going to be those 2-turn races. So slightly different dynamics, different types of horses can excel in these spots. But this is a loaded 11-horse field. And you'd have to assume, even though we don't have the morning line out yet, the number 6 Iron Orchard for Danny Gargan, as well as the number 2 Carmel Coast for Whit Beckman, among your two favorites because of just what they've done on the track and the sort of speed figures that they have been putting up in their early efforts. But Kaylie, this is a wide open field and really interested in getting your thoughts on this race because you went to a horse that I think is going to be a bit of a price on the morning line.
Absolutely. I mean, the Frizette drew up to be a really strong race. It's a full loaded field. And although we have what you could say is pretty wide open race, a lot of fillies are going to be trying something new. Some are facing bigger fields. Some are going to get that class test. But there is one filly to beat in here, and that's Iron Orchard. I'm going to try to beat her here. I think this is the spot that you can try to beat these fillies that maybe stand a little above their peers at this point, because anybody could take a step up here. So although I don't have a true knock on Iron Orchard, I'm just going to take a little bit of an approach of trying to beat her this time around. And I landed on the number 9, 5 bars for Shug McGahee. I thought that this horse really, really impressed me on debut. She relished the pace that was in front of her. She closed very well into it, very professional. And not to mention, I mean, Shug, first-time starter, winning on debut. You don't see that too often. So immediately when we saw that filly that day, I made note of that, and I couldn't wait to see where she'd end up next. Had a feeling it could be the Frizette. And Shug with second-time career starters who broke their maiden last time out. He's 2 for 8 over the last 5 years, 25%. I know that's a small sample size, $4.58 ROI. Integration is a good example of one of those horses that fall into that sample there. And he does really well with moves like this. And I really like the way that this filly looked. I mean, besides the fact that she got off pretty slow that day, she was checked pretty hard at the start, back to last place. Then she made a move in between 2 fillies. And that to me was really impressive. She really wanted to win that day. You don't see 2-year-old fillies perform like that too often. And I love how she ended with her ears perked and looked like she could have gone around again. So I'd imagine maybe even with more pace here, we can see a big step up, because I know the figure was a little light, but she'll be a price. So wanted to take
it will be. And it's funny. I remember you and I looked at the past performances when her debut race came out, and you made me eat my words because I said, "Don't do it to me, Shug."
Yeah.
You know how much I love Shug McGahee, and I always think about how reading the tea leaves sometimes for a first time starter can be a little tricky. And I remember this was 8-1 in the morning line, and I thought, "Oh man, this horse looks really good. I like the workouts." And
Mm-hmm.
often see Shug McGahee take on a horse from a first crop sire like Maxfield. You normally associate Shug with horses, that Ogden Phipps line, big names, really established sires. And to see him taking a horse that's a Maxfield, I thought was notable. The horse, man, ran a huge race coming down the stretch. Tons of talent there. I
Mm-hmm.
have first, third, but I don't have any knocks. And here's the thing is I think there's a lot of pace in this race. And when you talk about
Absolutely.
turn mile, that's a problem because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be in a speed duel doing a 1-turn mile, especially with these 2-year-olds who are all stretching out for the most part from
Mm-hmm.
6 and 6.5. So
Absolutely.
for me, that's one of the reasons why I was playing against Iron Orchard, who I have a lot of respect for. Danny Gargan's done a great job with his New York bred, sired by Authentic. Perfect 2 for 2, including a win in the Seek the Ante Stakes. But you do worry because just about everybody else wants to be up on the lead. Certainly Carmel Coast for Whit Beckman, who was
Mm-hmm.
very impressive in debut, earned an 86 Beyer speed figure at Saratoga. That horse wants to be up on the lead. You can look at a horse like the number 5, Sakane for Sappy Joseph Jr., a
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania bred who's very fast, wants to be up on the lead. You can certainly look a little further outside to a horse like Steer Clear, as well as Lovely Christina. So when you have all of these horses that want to be up front, really does set up for a horse coming from off the pace. So definitely endorse your selection of 5 bars. Not that you need my endorsement for it, but a horse I like as well. I ultimately landed on the number 8, Ice Cream for Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, this is a very similar MO. A horse that's actually a maiden and just lost to 5 bars, but was coming late as well and was kind of running into that same pace that 5 bars was running into, sat maybe a little bit more mid-pack and made a run. It's going to be interesting. I think both these horses have the ability to take big steps forward on their speed figures just because of the way that race was run and played out. So I think these two are really live. Obviously, when you talk about Ice Cream for Everyone, trained by Todd Pletcher, sired by Gunrunner,
Mm-hmm.
out of a Couvee mare, Carolina, who is a very, very good mare and has been a very successful brood mare as well. So I like this pedigree a lot for Rapoli Stables. I like the way this horse has been training since that August 23rd race. And again, we will go to the same maiden race, just 2 different horses. And I think both of these are going to be prices.
Absolutely. I'd imagine so. And I completely agree with the angle you're taking as well with Iron Orchard. Obviously, there's no true knock on the filly. 2 wins in both of her starts, but she was, quick to the front, up on the lead. Me and you both landed on a bit of a price that showed that they could pass horses on debut. And
Yeah.
that's something I
Yep.
love to put weight on with these 2-year-olds. Already knowing that they have that ability certainly shows promise for, them taking a step up in their next start as well. Certainly if they get off better in terms of the Shug horse, she breaks a little more sharply. That can even help her out. She can sit a
Yeah.
mid-pack type of trip and have a ton of pace to close into. And same with your horse. And I mean, just calling it how it is, this is a really full field. Iron Orchard's here. Tommy Joe's over at Keeneland with a small field. I mean, Iron Orchard, you'd imagine she ended up here. She didn't want to face Tommy Joe. That's definitely, I mean, I know Danny Gargan obviously put both of his horses here in New York, and maybe that was the plan all along, but I'm just saying here, I think that this is more of a wide open fillies race than the one that we'll see at Keeneland, and that makes for a really good betting race, much better than, the Alcibiades.
Yeah, yes. No, this is an outstanding betting race. And it's interesting. Todd Pletcher has 3 fillies in this race.
Mm-hmm.
Notable because he has Tommy Joe in a 6-horse field down at the Keeneland with the Alcibiades. He's not running anybody against Tommy Joe down there. So it's interesting. You actually have in your third position One of those Pletcher horses, Steer Clear, the number 10, with Ricardo Santana Jr. up. Ricardo's been riding very, very well up here in New York, whether it's Saratoga or now Belmont at the Big A fall meet. So this is one, though, broke its maiden last time out and has shown some promise, I think, as well.
Definitely. This is one that I hope I could get maybe double-digit odds on. I know it's Pletcher, but it's one of the more under-the-radar ones that he has in here as well. Santana's up. Santana obviously has been riding really well up here in New York, so that caught my attention. And this is one that I just wanted to use underneath. I don't really view her too much of a win contender, but she ran really well on debut. She ran second to Ornelia, the Chad Brown filly that's been benched ever since, and that filly was really promising on debut. And then she got a win in her second start, 7 furlongs, took a bit of a step up that day. I'd imagine the stretch out to a mile will be no problem for this one. So she's one that I had a bit of an interest in underneath.
Absolutely. No, more than understandable there in terms of a horse that could, again, move forward and good rider, great connections. I do want to talk about 2 other horses real quick. One of those is Carmel Coast, 4-trainer Whit Beckman. This one really dazzled in debut. Talked about it a little bit already. Kendrick Carmouche aboard was riding that day as well. Went straight to the front and never looked back, going 6.5. And listen, there is a lot to like there. You and I both love the sire Omaha Beach, and that's what is the sire for this horse out of an Arch mare. Now, listen, is going to be stretching out, is going to be going against winners for the first time, is going to be facing a lot of pace pressure, and is breaking toward the inside. So is going to be feeling maybe a little bit of heat from the outside from some of these other runners. I'm just not sure about the trip, and it's possible this one regresses a little bit from that 86 Beyer speed figure. And if that's the case, suddenly he doesn't maybe have an advantage over the rest of the field.
That's exactly what I thought about this one as well. I thought that her speed could, put her into the race early, and that could be good. But I do imagine the trip that she's going to work out could be pretty difficult with all the speed to her outside. Impressive on debut. I'd imagine she's probably going to be second or third choice here. And I wouldn't want to use her on top at a short price like that with all the speed present and just not knowing the type of trip she's going to sit. But no true knock there. And the speed figure makes you take her pretty seriously. That's why I imagine we both have her in our top 4.
Absolutely. And one other horse that I do just want to mention that we don't have in our top 4, but is the number 7 Chopsticks, who's an essential quality for trainer Brad Cox. Florent Giroux actually making the trip up to New York. Somewhat surprising as Giroux keeps his tack down in Kentucky, but he's making up the trip up to Aqueduct for Saturday, despite it being Keeneland opening weekend. And Chopsticks is a perfect 2 for 2, has won a stakes race last time out, and has that ability to come from off the pace as well. The issue with her, for me at least, is you didn't really see a progression from that first to second start. Just ran that 68 Beyer back, and she's going to need to take a 10 to 12 point step forward here. As you know, listen, Brad Cox with fillies, always outstanding. This one's training well down at Churchill, but I did just have maybe a little bit of hesitancy there to use a horse like that up top, though obviously have to respect the form and the connections quite a bit.
Absolutely. And that's probably the one filly I would call out to outside of my top 4. I noticed the same thing, just no progression in the first to second start. Just wanted to kind of wait and see how she performs against this field. A bit of an unknown, but one that I, pay close attention to if she is taking money and looks good.
Absolutely. It's going to be really interesting to see where the public money goes in this particular race. But listen, let's go from the Frizette to the very next race, which is the Champagne, and who's popping bottles at the club later? That's going to be the question mark here. And so it's not going to be you and me, but it could be Kenny McPeak. It could be Danny Gargan. It could be a lot of people here. But it's going to be a really fun race, 9-horse field. Your overwhelming favorite is going to be the number 6. It's Our Time. I don't need David Aragona to tell me that. I know that much. I can make that much of a morning line. But this is a horse that ran a hole in the wind in debut, ran a 94 Beyer speed figure and won by 17 3/4 lengths at Saratoga and set everybody's mind ablazing on social media that day. Now he's running back, I should say, for the first time against winners. But Kaylie, we're trying to beat him, right?
Yeah, we are trying to beat him. I mean, not to take away from how dazzling he was on debut. Obviously, Tom Amoss is a great trainer, and it's cool to see him with a horse like this. And obviously excited to see where the horse could go in the future. But to me, I just wasn't obviously the performance I was really impressed by, but when you're thinking about it, he's giving me a little bit of ferocious vibes in terms of
Yep.
last year where it's a huge debut and then maybe they tip off a little bit. Hopefully the horse, can run back to that. I'd love to see it, but obviously I'm going to try to beat a horse like this that I'm just not completely 100% sold on.
Yeah, it's understandable. And I think that you and I talk about this, and certainly our colleagues, Acacia Clement, Andy Serling, Maggie Wolfendale, they talk about this as well. Now they talk about it maybe a little bit more with fillies than colts, but everybody gets their horses cranked for Saratoga. And it's very prestigious to break your maiden as a 2-year-old up in Saratoga. That's a big deal. Ownership groups want that. Trainers want that. Connections want that. What usually happens is they get them all the way cranked up for debut, and then inevitably there's a little bit of regression in that next start. And it's just because you can't keep a horse at that level, a young horse at that level, for that long. And so there's going to be a little bit of like, okay, let's dip them back down and let's get them peaking again at the right time. So I'm with you on this. It's our time. As impressive as that horse is, some of the other horses that came back to run have not really, they haven't run poorly, but it hasn't really been an overwhelmingly, not a key race, or a productive race necessarily as it's come back. So I do question maybe how good the competition was that one beat that day. Now it's going to be facing some tough company, and it's going to be facing other horses that are going to be applying some pace pressure. And I'm willing to try to beat this one. We both landed on the same horse to do it, and that's the number 9 Talkin' for trainer Danny Gargan.
Yeah, this horse was a little green on debut, but I just love the way that he finished up and he never really disengaged. Even as a young 2-year-old, I mean, he worked pretty hard to get to that winner that was pretty loose down the stretch. Yeah. So that to me was pretty promising, to chase a horse that was alone up on the lead all the way around the track. You just never really saw this one quit. And he got by easy when he got there. It looked like he wasn't going to, but then he did. And he looks to have a lot of substance to him as well, size-wise. And I like a horse that's able to rate. I mean, I'd imagine he's going to rate off It's Our Time. And also the number 8 has some speed as well. Hopefully, if he can just set a nice pocket trip, tucked in behind those two, he can set a nice trip there. But he impressed me a bit on debut. He was the only one here that I saw that I would love to take a shot with. I mean, I have interest in Universe as well. Universe, I thought about it for a little bit, but Danny Gargan's number 9 was the one that stuck out to me. But if It's Our Time runs anything close to what he did on debut, I believe he is the horse to beat regardless, but then they're all running for second here if he runs like that again. But he was asked pretty hard down the stretch that day to get that margin of victory. And like you said, I just wonder how he's gonna perform coming into this now, obviously facing a little bit of tougher company. But I think those are the only 2 horses I'll use on my ticket is It's Our Time and Talkin'.
Yeah, I think that sounds right to me as well. Listen, Talkin', a very nice horse, one I landed on obviously as well. I noticed a lot of the same things you did coming from off the pace. Kendrick Carmouche had a couple of options in this race, decided to stick with Talkin' and Danny Gargan. That was notable. I think really won the draw, if anybody can say that, in a 9-horse field. But I like the fact this one draws outside. Kendrick can kind of play the break and slot this horse over. You have the whole backstretch to work your way over towards the rail. You keep this one out of trouble. So there's a lot to like there with this horse. And was able to track down a horse in Stradale who's also in this race, who was a very well thought of horse. And, you look outside of Talkin', and nobody else was really making up any ground in that race. Basically, the top 3 were kind of running in place, and then Talkin' was the horse that made up the ground that day, and was able to track down Stradale there in those final strides. And so for me, Talkin' just made a lot of sense as a horse that can take a step forward in that next start. I think has been training well for Danny. Good magic out of a Tisnow mare, $600,000 purchase as a yearling. So there's some expectations here with this horse. And listen, with Tom's horse, I like It's Our Time quite a bit, but I do remember looking, and Tom, it's interesting. Second starts for horses that won in debut, not necessarily a ton of success over the years. And I think the stat that I was looking at was like 2 for 22 over the last 5 years, I want to say, with 2-year-olds who had won their first start and then ran in a graded stakes in their second start. So it's a little bit of a question mark, I think, in terms of how they are going to perform maybe here. And there's ultimately maybe a little bit of regression to the mean.
Yeah, maybe that was in New York. I think I found a stat that was 0 for 14 with maiden winners last out, then going into a graded stakes in their next start. So
Oh,
I don't
that's
know,
possible.
maybe,
Yeah.
yeah. So for me, that kind of, I viewed it as a possibility to try to beat the horse, but he could be really good. So I am going to use him on any sequences I'm playing that day. But yeah, for me, it's these two. And I mean, Universe, we saw him in person, the number 3 for McPeak with Chris Elliott aboard, who's riding really well. And, we saw this Universe horse at Kenny's barn, and he was pretty impressive in person. I know that Kenny's pretty high on him, and I thought that he was professional on debut as well. So he was another one. If you're trying to get creative, I'd imagine he's going to be a pretty big price. He broke slowly on debut, and as soon as Chris Elliott asked him, he ran pretty well and won pretty dominantly. I know it was a light figure, but I do think that 1 or 2 out of that race improved in their next start significantly. So that was also nice to see. But he was the only other creative idea I had in here.
Yeah, listen, Kenny was a big fan of this horse. I mean, when we were there, he said, "You want to see next year's Kentucky Derby winner?" And so, listen, Kenny's a little bit of a showman, but clearly does have big expectations. And even back towards the end of the summer, was already saying, "Hey, his next start's going to be in the Champagne." He knew where he wanted to point this horse right off the bat. So this horse is going to have to move forward, but has the ability to do so for sure. And I'm glad you pointed out Chris Elliott. Yeah, riding well. A young jockey who, he runs real well up at Finger Lakes, and he's had a lot of success now running in the main NYRA track as well. Actually, is running down in Keeneland, if I'm not mistaken, one of the days opening weekend. So that's exciting for him. So I ultimately went to a horse, Napoleon Solo for Chad Summers, Joel Rosario. Interesting horse. I just think ran a really big race against Restricted Company in debut. This was a sales price Restricted Company race. This was only a $40,000 purchase out of, sired by Liam's Map. What caught my attention was the horse can rate a little bit. Now, sat third in the very early going of the race before taking over and kind of putting away that field, but showed the ability. It wasn't headstrong, sort of a thing, could rate a little bit off the pace. You get Joel up, Joel can take a horse to the front. You can take a horse to the last place as well. Joel can take a horse just about anywhere. So, what he does during the race, sometimes I scratch my head, but when he's in the winner's circle, I don't question it. But here's the thing. Since that race, this is a horse that's fired off 3 straight bullet workouts on August 31st, September 18th, and September 26th. Some pretty serious workouts, including that 47-2 one at Belmont on September 26th. That was first of 51. This is one who I think could move forward maybe a little bit. I think Liam's Maps can get a mile on the dirt. We saw that with a horse like Deterministic, who obviously then went on to the turf and had a is having a very, very good career on the turf. Absolutely. But I just thought underneath is a little interesting.
Is a little interesting. I actually looked at this horse in a last year's sale, so I'm playing against him because I wanted him at the sale, and he was a $40,000 purchase. But no, I'm just kidding. Liam's Maps, you're right. They can get definitely a mile on the dirt, maybe even a little longer, depending on the dam influence. But this one was interesting to me as well. I do wonder, the way that the horse drew, the type of trip that he's going to sit. Obviously, I landed on the number 1 and 4th, who you used too, but I just had a little bit more interest in Universe and hoping maybe he'll be a bigger price as well, just because Napoleon Solo got a pretty big figure first time out as well.
He did. And we'll talk a little bit about the one curtain call for West Point Thoroughbreds, trained by Mark Cassio, Ricardo Santana Jr. taking over the mount for Jose Ortiz, who's going to be down at Keeneland. And this is one who came in third place to Ted Nafi in Butane as well, in that grade 1 hopeful. And, is an interesting horse. In debut, finished a distance second to Obliteration, but that horse came back to win a stakes race next time out. Then goes and breaks its maiden over a wet track at Saratoga and does so impressively over a horse Tagermine and Throckmorton. Throckmorton comes back to break its maiden eventually on the synthetic for Jose D'Angelo. But then goes into the hopeful and doesn't make much of an impact. Tis the Law out of an Into Mischief mare. Obviously, some expectations there with West Point. I don't love the inside draw. The horse doesn't have elite early speed, and Stradale, who's right to his outside, has outstanding early speed.
Mm-hmm.
I just worry that horse kind of maybe cuts off Curtain Call a little bit, and suddenly Curtain Call has maybe a little bit of a tougher trip than maybe he would have liked in this particular spot. So I just worried about those things, and that's what kept me from putting that horse maybe higher in my top 4.
Definitely. And I mean, I didn't have a true knock on this horse whatsoever. I don't really think Tagger means that good. But
No, I don't know.
Definitely the 2 races that the horse is coming into this race with, I mean, makes sense. At least fits on paper. I think he can run 4th for sure. Fits figures wise. The mile shouldn't be a problem. I mean, that just one, at least he ran honest, last time out in the hopeful.
He did.
To what he did in the start prior. So for me, that was enough to put him 4th. But I agree with you. The 2 could cause some difficulty for him.
Yeah, just in terms of getting over and, then cutting him off. And now he can pass horses. He can come from a little off the pace. But the problem is, where do you end up and how far back do you end up when you're getting checked up from that inside rail sometimes? That can be a real bugaboo for a lot of jockeys and a lot of horses. So just worry about that, particularly for a young horse. But obviously a ton of talent there. As well. And, Stradale is a horse we didn't talk about, but that was one, a lot of speed, but like you said, was loose up on the lead going 7 and couldn't get the job done. Now we're stretching out and he's not going to get loose. So I just, even though he's a $1.3 million horse, I just don't see it happening for that Sonny Yopon for Steve Asmussen. So listen, Kaylie and I, we're going to take some shots. We're taking some shots against the favorites up here at Belmont at the Big A. But it's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see how these 2-year-olds run up here in New York this weekend, that's for sure.
I can't wait. I think these are the 2 best betting races out of all the 2-year-old races. So definitely going to be a lot of fun to play them, and looking forward, obviously, to seeing if It's Our Time can run close to debut, because if so, that'll be pretty exciting.
It will be. It would also be very exciting to see a horse like Iron Orchard, a New York bred, maybe Definitely. Get that entry into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. So a lot of exciting storylines here. And I agree, the best 2 betting races at Belmont at the Big A. So make sure to play them on NYRA Bets. For my colleague, Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races. And reminding you, friends, it's now post time.